So tonight I want to talk a little bit about living an intentional life and how we view the meaning of life, really, and how that can direct, if we cultivate it, where we put our mind, our actions, our speech, how we live. I want to weave together a few pretty big ideas tonight, so we'll see how it goes. But they're based in the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. Some of you familiar, some of you perhaps a little less so, but the Buddha taught something called the Four Noble Truths. The word truth is an important one, not the Four Noble Maybes or the Four Nobles, maybe you can disprove it, although I invite you to. This teaching is a beautiful teaching, I think, to the Western scientific minds, which are all of us really, which is you're invited to question and discover by applying the teachings of training the mind, whether or not indeed the things that Buddhist theory says will happen do happen. So you don't take it on faith. That being said, these truths are pretty hard to dispute. And I will briefly explain them or summarize them now. And you can try to dispute them if you like and see how that goes. The first noble truth is the truth of impermanence, or the truth of change. So what that means is that everything changes. Nothing stays exactly the same. So your body, did it remain exactly the same for this 20-30 minute sit? Of course not. You shed all sorts of skin cells, and bacteria did their little party in your gut, and thoughts came and went, and you blinked your eyes. All sorts of changes happened. So fair enough, that didn't stay the same, did it? Well, what about this building? Did it stay the same? Well, on gross sort of lazy observation, it might look like it stayed more or less the same. But what about the gradations of light as the clouds moved over the sun and away from the sun? What about slightly imperceptible, but if we had better sense data, perceptible changes to the scent in the room, to the air molecule movement? Many of us can feel the heat pump cooling the room. Many, many changes. What about the mountains over there? Well, mountains change second to millisecond. A pebble rolls, an animal scurries by and displaces some dirt, and so on. Try to find something that never changes. Take that kind of challenge out into your week and think about things. Is there anything that doesn't change? The first noble truth, or if you don't want to take it as a truth, that's completely fine. Take it as a matter for advisement. Is the first noble matter of advisement is go see if you can find anything that stays the same. The first noble truth says you'll probably find out. What the rest of us have found out is that everything changes. The truth of impermanence or anicca. Okay. Fine. How is that particularly helpful for those of us that are generally drawn to this teaching? Because we'd like to suffer less. We'd like to be happier, have less anxiety and pain. We'd like to maybe be more in contact with our greater heart, our better self. What does this change thing have to do with that? Don't ask me, ask the Buddha. The second noble truth is that things don't always change in the way we want. And when we fight that reality, we will have distress or suffering, the truth of dukkha, or suffering. Think about your own life so far. This is a no-brainer. It's pretty easy for all of us. Does everything that happens to you feel good? No! Cancer diagnosis, broken legs, heartbreak, sour milk that you take a big jug of before you realized it was sour. All sorts of changes we experience as unpleasant. A flat tire, a nasty, unpleasant coworker who says unkind things toward us, and so on, and so on, and so on. Of course, some of the changes that occur in our life we don't experience as pleasant. They're not wanted. They're things we don't want. Others, of course, are very much welcome. Having kind friends, having a delicious meal, having a kitten purr in your lap. Many, many things we experience as positive. Unless you're allergic to kittens, then that last one you experience as negative. And that's okay. The Buddha said, I know the pleasant for the pleasant and the unpleasant for the unpleasant. What does that mean? It means a wise, discerning mind observes the changes and is aware that some of them can have an unpleasant sense tone or feeling tone to them, and some of them can have a pleasant sense tone or feeling tone to them. And some of them can be neither pleasant nor unpleasant, which is sometimes called neutral. The Buddha was saying, that's a profound teaching actually, I know the pleasant for the pleasant and the unpleasant for the unpleasant. He was essentially saying, therefore I never suffer. How can you have an unpleasant change and not suffer? That's the second noble truth. The second noble truth says things are going to change. Some of them you'll experience as pleasant, some as unpleasant, and you suffer when you fight that reality. The truth of clinging or wanting, trying to direct our lives, guilty at times, I suspect guilty at times, trying to engineer our lives so we only get the good stuff, right? Trying to control reality or your partner or your boss or your whomever so that it's always pleasant. So you get what you want. Nothing bad ever happens. How's that working for y'all? Anybody cracked that code yet? If so, you're an enlightened Buddha. You can't usually manage very well for more than a moment or an hour or maybe half a day to engineer the changes and control them so that they go the way you want. And when they change in ways you don't want, too often, without realizing it, we cling to wanting it to be different. You don't love me anymore, you're going off to live with someone else, our marriage is over. We cling to wanting that change to not be there. But it is. Arguably, if you could with open heart and open palms say, wow, that's a change I experience as unpleasant, but I wish you well, my friend, you wouldn't suffer. That is actually possible. But most of us aren't there yet. So we start with smaller things. Let's say you get home tonight and you knock your favorite coffee cup on the floor and it smashes. That's a change that you might experience as unpleasant. But instead of clinging to wanting it to be different, oh, I wish I hadn't knocked it over. I wish the floor wasn't so hard. I wish my favorite mug hadn't shattered. If you just accept the truth of the change, oh, that happened. You don't suffer. You get a broom. You sweep it up. You move on. You don't go on Facebook and make a self-pitying post about how you broke your favorite mug tonight and everybody should feel badly for you. Sorry, that's creating a lot of suffering. And then you phone your friends and say, oh, Moni, you wouldn't guess what happened. My favorite mug that I got on my honeymoon at Niagara Falls and I broke it. Suffering, buckets of suffering, unnecessary. First noble truth says things will change. Sometimes mugs break. Second noble truth says, if you cling to wanting it to be different, you'll suffer. If you let go, third noble truth, you won't suffer. The third and noble truth says the cause of our suffering is fighting reality. There's an old song, I think Eddie Cochran did the original. I fought the law and the law won. My favorite version is by The Clash. I fought the law and the law won. Try to fight reality. It will always win. The mug will stay smashed. The person who doesn't love you in this moment doesn't love you. They might change later. Back to number one truth. Things change. But when we fight reality, we will lose. The second noble truth says we suffer because we cling. We want it to stay a certain way. We don't want it doing something we don't want. The third noble truth is let go of that clinging. Let go of that fighting with reality, and peace can be present. I invite you to challenge yourself to practice that with small losses, small unpleasantnesses this week. Sour milk, broken mugs, things like that. And when you find the mind going, oh, this is unpleasant, I'm upset, go, okay, something changed, number one truth. I don't like it, fair enough. But how about I let it go? Third noble truth says when we let go of clinging to wanting things to be a certain way, we're fine. We don't suffer. This is absolutely possible, and you'll experience it when you work with little things. And then guess what? I want you to work with medium things. The death of your beloved pet from old age. Oh, right? I imagine almost everybody here is a pet lover. And it's very sad. We sign on. It's a ridiculous thing, loving an animal, really, when we know they'll live 10, 15 years and reality says we'll probably outlive them. But what if you can be in alignment with the first noble truth? Everything changes. This pet's beautiful life is coming to an end through old age and failing the same way I will and you will. And we simply are with grace and equanimity and simplicity with the truth of the ending of a life. We don't need to suffer. We might shed a tear. We might be sad, but not suffering. Why did this have to happen? It's called biochemistry. That's why it had to happen. It's called the nature of reality. And when we're in alignment with reality, we don't need to suffer. That's the third noble truth. Each of these I could teach a week on, but I'm giving you a little wee overview. Some things happened. This might illustrate the point. I was in Vancouver with my partner and my two nieces a few days ago. I took my nieces over to see a concert there, and I was being clever. You know it's not going to end well. And I thought, due to various reasons, driving from Duke Point over to the ferry, taking the ferry from Duke Point, when we came back, the nieces had to be delivered back up to Denman Island. Bit of a drive, right? I had some big deadlines. So, hey, sweetheart, we'll take 2 cars. We'll leave your car parked at Duke Point. We'll go over for our 24-hour trip. When we get back, I'll hop in car number 2 and my sweetheart will drive the nieces up island, save me 3 or 4 hours of driving that I could go do work. It worked out really well. We dropped the car. Never done that before. Normally we only need 1 car to go on the ferry. Came back, picked his car up. I jumped in. I started the car. I'm like, dang, honey, something happened to your muffler. So he got down and looked. He said, someone's cut it off. This was a change. First noble truth. It was a change we experienced as unpleasant. Second noble truth. But here's the beautiful thing, and this is absolutely not always the case with my mind. I was in a really good state. It was no big deal. It was like, oh, all right, is it safe to drive? He said, yeah, it's safe to drive. I said, all right, well, take the girls up to Denman and I'll drive it home. Man, was it embarrassing, because it also turned out it was almost out of gas and I had to go to a gas station. It's like some crazy muscle car and people are looking at me like, really? You think that's cool? I'm like, really? I don't. But hey, it's a change. The Buddha told me about this. The moral of that story is because the mind was in a good state, it's often not, I'm not an enlightened being, but I was in a good state and it was just no big deal. It was a mild inconvenience. The reaction was third noble truth. I didn't cling to, oh, I wish we still had a muffler. Oh, I wish we hadn't parked the car there. I wish we'd known, etc., etc. Instead, it was just that happened, unpleasant, no big deal. I did not go on Facebook and write a self-pitying post railing against the hoodlums and thieves of the Nanaimo district area and oh, poor me, and so on and so on and so on. That's the clinging that creates suffering. There's a lovely phrase that's often used, which is that pain is inevitable, meaning the pet dies, the muffler's gone, there may be some unpleasantness, but suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable, and suffering is optional. An arguable phrase, but in this context, we can take it more or less as saying, some things are difficult, don't cling, and you don't have to suffer though. You don't have to lay on all the layers of the cup, and my favorite cup, and from my honeymoon, and this is a disaster, and why am I so clumsy, and why is gravity, and whatever else. That part's optional. These are fairly easy truths, really difficult to practice consistently, right? On any other day, I could have been in a major negative mind state about the muffler being taken, especially because funds are a bit tight right now, and an unexpected car bill isn't exactly in the budget. But instead it was, oh well, there it is. Oh well. Really nice when Dharma works. When training the mind works, when we experience a lightness of heart and mind in a situation that might have caused a darkness and a drama of the heart and mind. First noble truth, everything changes. Second noble truth is that things change. Some we experience as positive and some not positive and some as neutral. And when we try to control reality to be happy, we're in trouble. Third noble truth says, stop doing that. Accept the truth of change with grace and equanimity. Go with the flow, so to speak. Bend in the winds of change. Don't break. Now, the Buddha was a very compassionate teacher and a very compassionate person who I believe understood that this was going to be pretty hard for all of us folks to do on a regular basis. Just stop clinging. Just stop clinging. If you go home and all your pets are dead, stop clinging. Bury them. Be like, oh, that's sad. It was their time. If you go home and everybody you love is dead, same thing. Oh, it was their time. Right, we're not there yet, right? So, he gave us a training. The fourth noble truth lays out a path, the Eightfold Path. A lot of numbers in Buddhism. The 8 trainings, think of a pie with 8 pieces. Now I'm hungry because I didn't have dinner yet. Think of a pie with 8 pieces, and these are 8 trainings, or 8 ways to work with your mind and your behavior and your life and your approaches to things to help us cling less so we suffer less. To help build that graceful going with the flow, the ability to see the truth of reality instead of freaking out about it when it's a difficult reality, like a cancer diagnosis. How do we be in alignment with the truth? I saw a friend of mine yesterday, dear friend of mine, who was diagnosed with breast cancer about 3 months ago, just had her lumpectomy, waiting to see the oncologist. She was just radiant. We're at a beautiful Buddhist, what's called a Wangkor yesterday, a Tibetan ceremony. Some of you were at the Wangkor of White Tara that Lama Mark offered here last summer. And my friend's in a terrific state. She's been in a terrific state since the diagnosis. She's been meditating. She's been insistent to only be around positive people who have decent mind streams. We're all flawed, but we're generally trying to have decent mind streams. And she's working with her health and her practitioners and her healthcare team, moving through this unpleasant change, but not suffering because of it. Being in a pretty good mental state. Being in a gracious state of compassion for other people. This is possible for each and every one of us. You all do it some of the time, by the way, even if you've never heard the noble truths in your life. You know how to be awake, enlightened. It's when we let go of freaking out about reality and we let go of trying to be okay all the time. When we soften our crazy belief that we can be okay all the time and we realize things come and go, we are at our best, our most compassionate, our most thoughtful toward other people, our most forgiving and kind toward ourselves when we accept these truths of change. So back to number 4. The Eightfold Path, the Buddha, I have a feeling, and I am extemporizing here, so I don't take it as historical fact, that when the Buddha was teaching the first 3 noble truths, a lot of people went, but that sounds really hard. And he said, okay, I'll help you out. Here's a path. Here's some trainings to practice. This will help strengthen you so that you do a better job. It's more easy to let go of the changes, the muffler, the broken cup, the cancer diagnosis. If you want to become better, more easeful at rolling with the changes of life, practice these 8 things. The 8 group into 3 chunks or categories, and essentially we can say they're about wisdom, first category. That's the one I'm going to talk about tonight. The second category is conduct or behavior, how we act in the world. And the third is meditation. I'll briefly address the second and third, and then I'm going to talk a little about the first cluster of the 8. So there are 2 in the wisdom cluster. I'll get to those in a moment. There are 3 trainings. That would be 3, not 4. 3 trainings in the ethics or behavior or conduct cluster. The Buddha teaches us to train in our action, wise action, how we act and behave. Pretty straightforward. Don't steal. Don't be cruel to people. Don't beat people up. Don't, do unwholesome activities. Cultivate wholesome activities. When you mess up, try again. Try to correct it. Try to make amends. Wise action. Wise speech is another training, and this is pretty tough for a lot of us, especially those of us who speak for a living. I generate a lot of words in any given day, we all do, but mine are meant to, a lot of the time, be helpful or wholesome to my psychotherapy patients, to students, to friends. When I write, I generate a lot of words, and some of them aren't skillful because I'm not an awake Buddha yet. So training in speech, training in communicating with kindness, with clarity, without ego, without arrogance, speaking only the truth. trying not to exaggerate or belittle people or speak unkindly or harshly, etc. This is another training that the Buddha invited us to do. Why? Because when we're more alignment with our action and our speech, these first two in this conduct cluster, we create less waves in our mind. You know that. If you've had a really titchy day and you've been quite unpleasant and said kind of unkind or nasty or snotty things to some people, and you've acted kind of poorly and a bit like a brat, and you had a tantrum in the grocery store because the line was too long, you just were not behaving that well, it really creates consternation in your mind, right? Yes, because you're decent human beings who don't like it when you're in your more tantrumy, unpleasant self. I don't either. So why is these trainings so important? Because if you want more peace and grace, you want to reduce the amount of unwise action and speech and livelihood. These are the 3 conduct clusters. So there's 8. 2 wisdom, we're going to talk about at the end. 3 conduct, how we act and behave and speak. Livelihood is choosing work or volunteer or school life that is basically wholesome. Don't go train to be an arms dealer and a drug runner and to kidnap children. I mean, that sounds foolish, but it's not really. What is our livelihood? Is it positive? Is it wholesome? Is it beneficial? Are we putting up some money, crazy rip-off hedge fund to, cheat people out of their life savings? That's not wholesome. It's going to create consternation in your mind and in your being and in your life. So train in your livelihood, whether that's our paid profession, our volunteer work, our parenting, our school life, etc., to be basically as absolutely wholesome as you can. That's 3 of the pieces of the pie for us to all train in. I can speak extensively about each of them in the future. So there's the wisdom cluster, the conduct or life activity cluster, speech, action, and livelihood, and the meditation cluster. We worked on that a bit in the beginning. The 3 types of training in meditation and training of the mind that the Buddha purported in these 8 pieces of the pie, the 4th noble truth, are wise concentration. We started to play with that, to explore that a bit tonight. That, what I called the flashlight beam of attention. You were attempting to concentrate on one thing and allow other things to fade into the background. You were attempting to concentrate on the sensation of breathing. And that's the beginning of training in wise concentration. There's all sorts of reasons why that's helpful. We can get into another time. There's concentration, and then there's wise or right effort, which basically means you're probably not going to fall off a log and get enlightened. It's going to take effort. It's going to take training. Training the mind, training your life, cleaning your life up. Being more wise in your actions and your speech and your livelihood. Training in concentration takes effort. Plunking your bum down to meditate daily takes effort. Coming on retreat and training the mind and being in silence and really working with these 8 faculties takes some effort. No problem. So does absolutely everything else that's mattered to you. Learning to be a good cook. Getting good at what you do for hobbies, what you do for a living. Being a good friend. Being a good singer. Playing the guitar. Learning to cook excellent Thai food. Everything else that matters to us takes effort. No problem that this takes effort too. Don't be scared off by the truth that it takes training. The meditation cluster, right or wise concentration, right or wise effort, and right, as in right, wrong, right or wise samadhi or peacefulness, calmness. So training the mind to be calm. Interesting. You might have thought calm and concentrated were the same. They're not. They're related. Teachings for another day. So we want to develop the effort in our meditation, the ability to concentrate, and to develop a calmness of mind, and many other things. But these are 3 of the pieces of the pie that train the meditation. Train the life, speech, action, and livelihood. Train the meditation. Back to the first 2 of the 8. We've had 3 and 3. That equals 6. And there's 8. Wisdom cluster. It's where it begins and where it ends. Well, what's it? Where the path to awakening, the path to freedom from suffering, the path to training your mind through meditation and Dharma study, the path to being free of greed, hatred, and delusion begins. Imagine having no selfishness. It's just eradicated from your mind and body. You never feel selfish or greedy or needy or wanting. Imagine having all traces of anger, irritation, judgment, unpleasantness eradicated from your mind and body. Imagine clearly seeing the truth of reality. So you kiss your little dog or your little cat goodbye. It slips away with one last breath. You bury it, and you feel love and bounty that you got to share that decade or two with that lovely sentient being. Imagine being free of suffering. I imagine it, and it keeps me motivated when my motivation flags because of all the effort required and all the greed, hatred, delusion that's still present in the mind that needs purifying. That's a preamble to the wisdom section of the 8 things we can train in to be free from suffering. These are right or wise view and right or wise intention. Aha! If you're paying attention, you may recall that's how I started today. I sat down and said in Buddha Dharma, we set an intention, right? Like a compass point to help us be reminded of where we want to end up. In Buddha Dharma, where we want to end up is to be free from suffering, to have a wildly wise mind that sees clearly the nature of reality, to have a deep, endless, compassionate heart that feels compassion for all beings, two-legged, four-legged, flying, crawling, all beings, and is moved to assist in whatever way we can to reduce and eliminate their suffering. That's a great intention. It's okay to start with a small intention. I'd like to feel better. I'd like to feel a bit more calm. I'd like to be less reactive and kind of grumpy when things don't go my way. I'd like to be able to take a gap and go, oh, the muffler's gone, instead of having a tantrum. I'd like to feel less anxiety and more calm. These are wonderful, great, mini, small I intentions. And I applaud each and every one of us for those intentions that generally brought us here, or in whatever way, to some sort of Buddha Dharma practice or meditation practice. Our suffering usually motivates us to seek this out. As one of my dear friends used to say, in the Dharma, there are stick people and carrot people. The carrot people are pretty good states and have pretty good lives, and they're curious to expand their consciousness. That's the minority. The rest of us are stick people. We're driven to the Dharma by pain, being beaten by a stick. We did everything right. We got the career, and we got the partner, and the kids, and the picket fence. Why aren't we free of suffering? Why is there this much pain in the mind? Why is it not working out for me? Usually we're drawn to the Dharma because we are suffering. Great, brilliant, fantastic intention. But wise intention is bigger than that. Wise intention is the drive to be completely free of suffering, not just for myself, but for everybody, for all beings. At your best, you're already like that. If things are going wonderfully for you in your life right now, the personal and professional worlds, the financial worlds are all going really well. There's a few, broken mugs along the way, but things are really quite good right now. And someone you love and care about is having a really rough time, an illness, a heartbreak, the death of a child. You are moved by that, right? You're not like, well, to heck with you, I'm good. No, because you're fundamentally compassionate beings. You're fundamentally kind, great beings. And when you're doing well and people you care about are having a rough time, you're not doing so well, are you? Right. That's everyday simple bodhicitta. Everyday simple care and compassion for others. Bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, we'll talk more about that in an upcoming class, is I want everybody to be free of suffering. It's okay to start with those you love the most. Your children, your parents, your friends, your loved ones. That's normal. But as you calm your mind more and more, your intention will likely grow. And you'll start to be even more concerned about the suffering of strangers. A lot of you already are. You dedicate your dollars or your time to causes, to nonprofits, to charity events. You write checks to the SPCA and Amnesty International. You already care about strangers, two-legged and four-legged, that you'll maybe never meet. But the great piece of the pie, the noble intention, is to eventually have a heartfelt connection with the desire to be free of suffering for yourself and all beings, and to want to assist others to be free from suffering as well. That doesn't mean you necessarily become a Buddha Dharma teacher. Maybe it means that you're the most warm, loving, kind person at your retail store where you work a cash register, and that your eye contact and your loving smile lights up a little bit that person's day. Wise intention, from a more traditional Buddha Dharma perspective, says, be careful what you wish for. Get really clear on what your intentions really are. Is it to be skinny, gorgeous, rich, famous, etc.? Okay, give that a shot, and then we'll see you when you come back. Because it won't deliver you from suffering. If that was true, all of the rich, gorgeous, skinny men and women who are rock stars and actors and actresses would be abundantly happy. And that would then be a great path that we should follow. It doesn't work. A few of them seem to be rather happy, and some of those have a Dharma path, by the way, or another sort of path that they follow that lets them know that being rich and famous and getting a great part in a movie, although pleasant arisings, great, enjoy the heck out of them, don't cling to them, let them go, because they'll change. Your depth happiness comes from deeper intentions than that. Getting rich, paying off your mortgage really quickly, losing 10 pounds. These aren't bad things. I'm not discouraging any of us from pursuing what are called mundane or regular goals. Mundane's not an insult there. It means regular life goals. Great. But pursue the great transformative goals. That's right intention. The commitment to train the mind away from greed, hatred, and delusion, and to open it up to peacefulness, wisdom, and compassion. The decision, the intention to say, I want to be free of my selfishness and my self-centeredness and my confusion. I want to enjoy the abundance of the life that each and every one of us has. I know we all have abundant lives because we're basically middle-class-ish Canadians. And we're all here, which means we have the faculties to get places and the ability to get places and enough food in our belly, even if we skipped dinner, to get places. That puts us in the top 3 or 5% of blessed two-legged humans on the planet in terms of how easy our external lives are. You know that, right? We're literally in the top 3-ish% of the population of the world for how comfortable our lives are as lower middle class or middle class Canadians. Wow, are we appreciating that enough? Probably not. There's often quite a bit of mental, emotional suffering, even though we have homes to go home to tonight. We'll sleep in a warm place where our life isn't in imminent danger. There'll be food to eat to keep the body going. We're so blessed. But that doesn't deliver us from suffering, or none of us would be here, myself included, for goodness sakes. If regular life delivered us from all suffering in the mind, we wouldn't be here. We're here because of deep wisdom, which is the 8th one, the first one, wise view. Get to that in a moment. A deep wisdom brought us here. So be careful what your intentions are, but have fun with it. Don't get all hung up and worried about it. Have fun. Wake up in the morning and set some wise intentions. Like, I'm going to cultivate my kind tone of voice today. When I catch myself speaking in an unkind tone of voice, I'm going to try to correct it. That's a good intention. I intend to clear time in my schedule to practice meditation for 30 minutes today. That's a good intention. I intend to go visit my lonely neighbor and take them some raspberries from my vines. That's a good intention. Are you living an intentional life? Or like so many of us, myself included at times, are you living a life a bit like you're a ball in a pinball machine? You're being bounced around by other forces, your family, your job, finances, whether you have a sore tummy today or not. You're kind of just bouncing often from thing to thing. And if that is part of the phase of life you're in, you'll know it. And you might say, I want to take some of this in hand. I want to pay more attention to my spiritual life or my physical health or my connection with loved ones. I want to make some wholesome changes. Those are intentions. Set wise ones. An exercise I sometimes teach to couples, and this could work with anyone, whether you're in a couple or not, a family or not, or whether you live solo. But with couples, I teach it that in the early part of their day, having their coffee or their tea or whatever, they say to each other, they think of a relationship honoring intention. Something they want to do toward or for or about their partner or their relationship. And they think of something they want to work on today, they set that intention, and then they share it with each other. This, like some of the other things I teach, grew out of my own experience of trying this on, practicing it with my own partner. And many days, not all, he has coffee, I have tea, we sit, and there's dog, dog, cat, cat. And we say, let's do our intentions, okay? And we think, and we come up with one, and we say, my intention today is to. And we put it out there. Do we always remember to do it? Not always. But more often than not these days, meaning if we set an intention in the morning, do we always remember to do it through the day? Sometimes it just, in one ear and out the other. But sometimes we revisit on our own or together. What was the intention today? Dang it. Oh, hang on. It was to, etc. And it helps guide the day. All of you can do that. Wholesome intentions that reduce suffering. I strongly advise you not to set intentions that will create more suffering. I'm going to go to work and be mean to everybody. It would be a very poor intention. And so on. You know that. But really, often we're subconsciously acting out negative intentions. I mentioned that at the top of the class today. Be careful what you tell yourself. Oh, I've got a bad headache today. Work's going to be awful. You're unintentionally setting an intention to have an awful work day. Be careful about that. Words matter. So the wisdom cluster, there's the conduct cluster, right? Right action, speech, and livelihood. There's the meditation cluster, right concentration, peacefulness, calm, samadhi, and effort. And there's the wisdom cluster, right intention or wise intention, and right view or wise view. That's the beginning and the end of the whole path, the whole 8. The way it's often taught is wise view is what brings us to hear the Dharma, or to become curious about meditation, or to become curious about training the mind. The wise view, little wise view, small w, is saying, I wonder if there's something other than what I thought would work to make me happy. I thought being a decent human, trying to find work that I enjoy and cultivating a community or family I enjoy would make me happy. And while those things are glorious, it feels like there's more. It feels like there's something I don't know that is a core part of happiness. In the West, we're not really taught from small children, the way in some Eastern countries with a Buddha Dharma or perhaps even a Hindu flavor or path. Small children in Tibet and in Thailand and other places are taught from birth, I'm really upset, I'm having a terrible day. Well, what's going on in your mind? What are the qualities of mind? If you're upset, it's the mind that is doing that. Let's look at that. Here, I'm having a terrible day. We might automatically say, well, what happened? Right? We're looking for external causes because that's our programming. Well, Johnny was mean and they stole my sandwich. Oh, well, that sounds really awful. So you're upset because of Johnny. Wrong! But we all believe that. We think we're upset because of Johnny, the terrible sandwich stealer, or the muffler stealer. Or Johnny grew up and moved on from sandwiches to mufflers, probably. But we're upset about them and what they did. But really, why are we upset? Because our mind's upset. Even when there's a cause, that's karma, cause and effect. Muffler gone, sandwich gone is a cause. The effect can be, I'm in a terrible mood now, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm crying, I hate Johnny, I hate the world, etc. I certainly fall into that. I suspect you all do sometimes. But we can say, whoa, I'm actually upset because of my mind's reaction to the missing sandwich, the missing muffler, etc. That's wise view. Wise view sees the truth of those noble truths, that everything changes, some of the changes aren't what we want, some of them are lovely. When we cling to trying to control reality, A, it'll never work, and B, we will suffer more. Wise view sees that. Wise view is what we can fall back on when we break our mug tonight and go, darn it, all right, it's just a mug and things change. Okay, phew, now I feel a bit less upset. I'm letting go of some of the clinging to liking the mug. I still like the mug, but things come and things go. Wise view is like our brilliant little, we talk about the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, telling you all the bad stuff and, yeah, go do it. Yeah, steal the sandwich, Johnny. Come on, man, do it. And the angel's like, Johnny, that's not a compassionate act. Don't do that. Maybe you could say, I forgot my lunch. Would you be willing to share? Right? Well, wise view is like the best angel ever on your shoulder saying, hey, Dwight, hey, Cheryl, hey, Linda, hang on a sec. What's really going on here? Oh, I made a hand gesture and the mug is now on the floor broken. Yep, that's all. Thank you, angel of wise view. Thank you. Wise view reminds us, in the big picture, what's a broken mug? In the big picture, what's a missing muffler, other than very loud? In the big picture, we're all going to leave the planet in 80 or 100 years. We don't have much time. Wise view says, open your heart and your mind. Stop, as the lovely line of books titles would say, stop sweating the small stuff. Stop clinging to the minority dumb stuff that happens that we can create so much suffering around. Let go. Third noble truth. Let go of your clinging to wanting it to be a certain way so I'll be okay. Guess what? You're not going to be okay. You're going to die. There's no way to be okay forever. Rewind. Maybe there actually is. Which is the way to be okay forever is to train the mind so the mind is okay no matter what. When you're in the process of dying, should we be lucky enough to be lucid while we're dying? So like a quick accident or something? To be in a beatific state of calm and love while consciousness fades and the body shuts down. Well, there's a way to be okay all the time. By the way, more than okay. Calm, compassionate, loving, wise, unperturbable. Mirror-like wisdom, the depth mind of Mahamudra. These are some deeper teachings I can go into another time, but I want to remind those of you that are familiar with that, that's what I'm talking about right here, right now. Non-conceptual mind, arisings and passings away, while there's the graceful resting back in the nature of reality, instead of fighting it. I hope that sounds tempting. And if that sounds a little too confusing or big, does it sound tempting to have no selfishness, no anger, no perturbed mind, just grace and happiness and curiosity and warmth and compassion for all beings? Wise view sees the truth of reality and quits sweating the small stuff. And when we build muscle by not sweating the small stuff, the mufflers and mugs and sandwiches, we can become better at the medium stuff. The end of a friendship due to a misunderstanding that we tried to correct, but the other person says, no, I'm done. Ouch. But can we accept that's a change? Can we leave the door open to a reconciliation if that being becomes ready to? Sure we can. The big losses, the deaths, the tragedies. Ouch. But when we train the heart and mind to cling less, we can become more and more gracefully aligned with those losses too. I know personally a few of you in the room who've lost a pet in the last few years, and you'd been studying the Dharma for a few years by then. And you said, as I certainly experienced myself, that was one of the places I first really felt the Dharma come home, is when my dog died 10-ish years ago, 15 now maybe. A beloved dog, soulmate dog. Whoa! Got me through so much rough stuff in my life. But I'd been studying the Dharma for quite a while when she passed, and it was incredibly peaceful to just be with her while she slowed down and eventually took her last breath. And some years before the same dog had died in the same way, I would have been devastated, probably for weeks, if not months, because of the clinging to wanting reality to be different. And my reasonable acceptance of the reality of it, she was an old dog, it was time for her to go, she was suffering some, time for her to let go, it helped so much. So we learn from our Caspers and our Felonies and our Rovers and our Fluffies. And maybe that helps us a little bit when it's an even bigger loss for some of us. Our partner, our spouse, our parent, our child. We rehearse on the broken mugs and the stolen mufflers and the stolen sandwiches so that we can strengthen that capacity for wisdom, right view, wise view, the beginning and the end of the Eightfold Path. I said that little view, little W gets us here. Little V, little wisdom. Something might help, something other than the good things I'm doing to be a happy, compassionate person. Maybe there's something more. This little, I call it the kitten scratching on the door of your soul. Let me in. A little Dharma call. And that brings us to listen or read a book or hear a Dharma talk or go on a retreat and to determine for ourselves whether it seems helpful as we test these truths, these guidelines. Do we find, when I let go of clinging to wanting the mug to be whole instead of shattered, I stop being upset. Wow, that worked. Cool. I'm going to keep practicing that. That gets us here to hear the teaching of the Buddha, to potentially practice training the mind and the heart and the view. Then, over years, or if you're very lucky, quickly, and I wish this for all of you, myself included, so far it hasn't been quick, but over time, we start to get big view, which is bodhicitta, which is, it is possible to eradicate all suffering from this being and all beings, and a motivation to act and serve in the world in our own unique ways to help facilitate that in everyone, in large and small ways. Each one of the committee members, the volunteers here in this group that open the room, who put the chairs out, who put the temperature controls on so we're all comfortable instead of too hot. All of that's little bits of wise view that a valuable thing to do on a Monday night is to support this gathering, to help create the space for each of us to come and listen and think and chew on and disagree with and test the teachings of the mind. Everything each of us experiences is through the mind. Everything. If you go to bed tonight and have a nightmare that you're being chased by a cougar and it jumps on you and it's going to eat you, you will wake up terrified. Because the mind is reality to the body. The body doesn't know if it's actual or not. Take that. If you forget everything else tonight, and I hope you won't, but if you forget everything else tonight, know that your entire experience of your life is in your own mind. There is no other reality than what's in your own mind. So if you're mad at that person who did that, it's in your own mind. That doesn't mean there weren't actions and words. Yep, I'm not denying that. But if I had a horrible day because Johnny stole my sandwich, it's not Johnny's fault and it's not this sandwich's fault. It's this mind's fault because I can't control Johnny, nor can anybody else apparently. I can't control, manifesting a new sandwich unless maybe I go make one. That would be a skillful choice. But I can control my mind's reaction to the change. First, second, third, fourth noble truth. I can stop suffering by accepting the truth of change and letting go. It's very simple. It's very profound. It's, for most of us, very difficult to remember on a moment-to-moment basis, which is why the times it goes well, there's an unpleasant change, and you find yourself pretty graceful about it. And you notice, okay, this is yucky and problematic in some ways, but I'm okay. Celebrate the win. Notice the mind accepting the truth of change. Muffler, no muffler. And not having a tantrum. What a relief. I could have come home from this lovely trip to Vancouver and then got in a bad mood. We act like it's random. No, it's the mind reacting to things. So I could have got in a bad mood because of the car phenomenon. Or I could have gone home rather loudly and been in a good mood. That's up to the mind, not the muffler. So remember that, but without beating yourself up. I fail. I get into a tangled mind state about something and the muffler and life. And if I notice and go, whoa, that's not a great mind state. I'm creating my own suffering now. It doesn't mean it all immediately dissolves. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. But it means that at least I'm aware that I'm in a nightmare of my own making. The big muffler drama of 2019 that ruined my life. That's a nightmare I'm creating, which is very, very empowering. Because I can wake up, just like you do when you're dreaming about a cougar eating your face. And you wake up, and in that instant you realize, oh, thank goodness, it's just a dream. It's not real. Same thing when you're creating a nightmare story in reaction to a change. It's only real if you let it be real. Wake up, wake up, wake up. The word Buddha means essentially to awaken. To wake up from delusion, to wake up from confusion, to wake up from a wrong view, which thinks if I'm rich, skinny, and famous, everything will be fine. Wake up to right view, which is stuff's going to happen. Some of it's going to be rough, and I can be graceful, loving, kind, and okay in the midst of it all. Like the most solid cork of a boat being tossed about by the seas, never sinking. That's what you would like your mind to be. Or at least that's what I would like your minds to be. I bow to your own inner choice as to whether that's something that appeals to you. So, wise view. Set good intentions. That's the wisdom part of the Eightfold Path. And now we'll sit together for just 2 or 3 minutes to kind of allow that to settle, kind of close the circle before we bring things to an end. And just bring the attention as best you're able, directing the flashlight beam of your attention to the sensation of breath at the nostrils, at the chest, at the belly. Choose one. And the peripheral awareness will still hear sounds and feel body sensations in addition to the ones associated with the breath. That's fine. There may be thinking, emotion, smells and tastes, visual phenomenon. That's fine. You're in a giant dark forest, and wherever you shine the attention, there'll be something interesting. But I ask you, invite you, to shine the attention, letting all the rest of the phenomenon do their thing, but shine the attention on the sensations of breathing until you hear the bell. And we'll close with what's called a dedication of merit, a reminder that in addition to training our own minds and hearts as our confused mind states lessen, we become more and more motivated to also help other beings. And this is a way to gather the good intentions and kindness and thoughtfulness in this room and dedicate it to our own awakening and to the awakening of everyone. By the merit of this strengthening activity of hearing the Dharma and sharing meditation, may there be a cessation of all confusion in each of our hearts and minds. May we be wise and compassionate, and may our good intentions affect positively all beings. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering.